Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, I appreciate your time. In this episode, I want to dive into the historical formation of the alliance of the Sahelian state. Why is it relevant at this particular moment where the continent of Africa is experiencing a fundamental shift in its geopolitical history? History will remember this moment as the period where the continent of Africa started making its strategic choices and engaging new partners, from the Russians, the European Union, including countries across the Asian part, China, and more importantly, the Middle Eastern partners, considering emerging Turkey and other fringe powers across the European Union. It is important at this particular time why these nations have observed the geopolitical environment that something has to change. If it does not change, then things will not work out the way they want to do. And that's the reason why when the country of Niger asked France to leave its nation, it was a huge political back and forth. Why is that? Because this particular region has been France's sphere of influence. And that's the reason why, if you think it's going to be easy for this country to boot out their geopolitical partners like France that have been sucking this region for centuries, then you are mistaken. We're going to be looking at the different reasons, the steps they have taken to move very closely with regards to seeking their freedom.
France's ambassador to Niger is to stay in the country despite an ultimatum from the new army leaders there that he leave. The decision was confirmed today during a major foreign policy speech by the president Emmanuel Macron. During those remarks, Macron confirmed that envoy Sylvain Ité was listening from Niamey, the capital of Niger, hours after the junta's deadline for his departure had expired.
I believe our policy is the correct one. It's based on the courage of President Bazoum, on the efforts of our diplomats and our ambassador in Niger, who will stay despite pressure from coup leaders. We do not recognize them. We support the president, who's not resigned.
Let me say this, folks. If you think that the countries of West Africa, I'm talking about the Sahelian countries in this case, including others that are breaking away from the colonial relationship with France, if you think that the breakaway would have been easy, that France would have just allowed them to leave or end those colonial relations, then you are mistaken. Make no error. France is one of the most connected countries in the world. And these countries are dealing with one of the nations that has huge connections across geopolitical partners. France is a member of the Security Council with veto powers. Make no mistake, the president of Turkey once called that particular circle of countries that the world is bigger than five, and France is a member of the big five. So Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, including Senegal, Gabon, and Guinea, including now the darling Ivory Coast, came to a realization that the colonial partnership that they've had with France is not going to serve its people. That's the reason why we will see countries breaking out from France from different aspects. The ones that are currently making that strategic choices, they have a reason for that.
It called on African countries to safeguard and consolidate their hard-won independence, the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and for resistance against neocolonialism in all its forms. Our continent has many challenges. In many parts of the continent, battles for control of Africa's natural resources are fueling conflict, instability, violence, and terrorism. Some multinational companies are engaged in unscrupulous conduct that is harming human health and polluting the natural environment.
Why is this relevant at this particular period? History will remember that at this time, the continent of Africa began making strategic choices that would never sit well with its partner. First, let's look at what happened. If you consider the historical relationship between France and this region in terms of their engagement, their colonized aspect, and how France they perceive the nation. France's presence in the continent of Africa, especially in the Sahel region, or West Africa, so to put it, has been that of a huge question that is not answered yet. These countries have started answering this question. Going back to Operation Serval, the Barkanande, it was important to understand why these countries began to look at their region, that no one is coming to save them. If they do not fight, if they do not engage, if they do not re-strategize, if they do not look at the current threats that are around, then they will be sleeping in their lorries. It is important to note that first, they asked France to leave their country, and that was never going to be easy. And France did not just leave. France struggled to leave. It is important to understand that it was a back and forth with regards to that decision for France to leave the country of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. And the pushback was not so easy.
I believe our policy is the correct one. It's based on the courage of President Bazoum, on the efforts of our diplomats and our ambassador in Niger, who will stay despite pressure from coup leaders. We do not recognize them. We support the president, who's not resigned.
Secondly, they cut ties with France and sever the colonial partnership and relationship that they've had with the country of France. Make no mistake, France is a very important country in the world. I'm talking in terms of connection. France has huge connections with International Monetary Fund, IMF, and you have World Banks and other European Union connection. France is everywhere. If you think these countries can just reboot or ask France to leave so easily, and then you are mistaken. It is important that as a result of this, these nations are dealing with one of the most connected countries around the world. We have to face that. And that's the reason why they are moving in a meticulous way. They are making strategic choices.
The coup leaders denounced the military agreements with France. What does that mean in practice?
So it could be very significant indeed. Basically, the leaders of the coup in Niger has gone on the record basically ripping up 5 military deals with France, some of it which have been in place since the 1970s. And basically, that could mean that the French troops, 1,000 or up to 1,500, there's different figures around, may have to leave. Paris hasn't responded. The French government hasn't responded yet, so we're watching on that. But they were forced out of Mali and Burkina Faso in the region after coups there, when the coup leaders basically kicked French troops out. So France had pulled back to Niger, their last remaining military foothold in the region. They've been trying for more than a decade to fight against jihadist forces in the Sahel. So it could be very significant indeed. I mean, it's not sure how Paris is going to react to this. They've flown a lot of their civilians out, but the military is still there. And the French government does not recognise the coup leaders as the authorities. So you've got this situation where you've got the de facto leaders, the people who are calling the shots, with the president under house arrest, and then the de jure leader that France still considers, Mohamed Bazoum, to be the rightful leader. So will they listen to this request? I mean, it could provoke tensions if they don't get out. France, of course, facing accusations of neo-colonialism. This puts them in a very difficult position indeed, and would severely compromise, of course, their military efforts in the Sahel.
Next, they move ahead to ask the United States of America to leave their country, there to close down the drone base in the city of Ouagadougou. And why was that important? It's important because having such a huge military base and a surveillance zone within your nation does not give that particular sovereignty that these countries were looking for. That's the reason why when the United States of America was asked during that situation in terms of the coup that took place in Niger, the United States did not sit back. It came ahead and pushed, withdraw aid and hold some finances that were very relevant in those countries. And that's what the United States of America, the former U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, came out and said this with regards to that particular event in Niger.
Our economic and security partnership with Niger, which is significant, hundreds of millions of dollars, depends on the continuation of the democratic governance and constitutional order that has been disrupted by the actions in the last few days.
The countries of the Sahel started moving closer, looking for new partners, engaging the Russians, engaging the Chinese, and looking for more important strategic partners, and also Turkey and some countries in the European Union. Of course, they are focusing with Middle Eastern partners as well. Why is this relevant? They want to diversify their partnership, their collaboration. All of these are important because as a result of this, it will give them the opening and the flexibility to start making strategic decisions. Make no mistake, these countries have clearly said that the current geopolitical arrangement, the current contract that France has at the moment with these countries does not meet the international and internal challenges that these countries face. We've seen that from the president of the country of Chad, who said it clear. He's reiterated it over and over that this partnership does not work. And it will not work because the fundamental difficulties economically, socially that these countries are facing needs them to turn to other partners that offer other alternatives. When AES was formed, a number of geopolitical partners laughed, and even the continent of Africa, they thought that this particular region, Mali, Burkina Faso, were kidding. Like I said, never underestimate someone who overestimate themselves. So it's important to note that this is relevant. By forming the alliance of the Sahelian state, these countries made a huge leap in regards to seeking for their freedom. It is relevant to also know that this association was criticized by the Economic Community for West African States known as ECOWAS. ECOWAS came out pretty strong, pushed back and forth. But what happened? They resisted. The colonial partners came and pushed back and forth. They resisted. The United States of America pushed back and forth. They resisted. The European Union pushed back and forth. They still resisted. This is important. They started moving closer to other partners that can provide them with their security. This region is a strategic region across the continent of Africa. This, what happens in the Sahel will determine what shapes the continent of Africa in terms of freedom, in terms of collaboration, in terms of managing relationship in the geopolitical sphere. This is important. As they move ahead, they decided that it is about time to start focusing on the reason why we talk about this instability in the region. They move swiftly to form a security pact that enables them to put together over 5,000 troops that will enable them target and also fight alongside to secure their nations, which is important. This particular move, it gives a clear picture to geopolitical partners that we know what we are doing. We really want to move ahead and try something new. We want to take our own security in our own hands. We want to make sure that if we have to survive, if we have to live, let it be in our own terms.
Distanced themselves from France and last year formed a confederation, the Alliance of Sahel States. The three countries already carry out joint anti-jihadist operations, especially in the region where their borders meet and the attacks are the most frequent. The all-expelled French forces opted out of ECOWAS and sought new alliances with countries like Russia that are keen to increase their presence in the region after the coups.
New alliances are important. They started working through new alliances. The ministers of those nations started engaging other strategic partners around the world. We saw that at the United Nations. We saw that for visiting experts or other foreign ministers who went to the region to talk about their relationship and to build new partnership. All of these are relevant measures that the countries are moving. Most recently, they went ahead to get out from ECOWAS and they asked ECOWAS that we're not going to come back. I think that a lot of people fail to understand. I think ECOWAS as an organization failed to understand the fundamental relationship that these countries have with the colonial nations like France. Why is that important? Well, it is important to note that as a result of their interaction with France, there is a combination of things that always get lost in the radar. France has been one of these nations that has attempted over and over to suck out these countries from their different, not just natural resources, but in terms of their relationship and collaboration in several areas. That's why, first, they do not just have to deal with ECOWAS, they have to deal with France as well to sever that relationship. Now, what happened? They moved ahead to engage looking at new passport. This particular passport will enable them to move people across this particular region freely. It is a step forward. What they are doing, I don't know. If it is the right decision, we all will find out. If it is not the right decision, we all gonna find out. But again, they are moving really fast to accept their confidence and their success and to survival with regards to what's going on in the region.
The relationship between Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger is getting tighter. The junta-led allies will own common passport from January 29, the date of their departure from regional bloc ECOWAS. The military leaders had already teamed up to form the Confederation of Sahel States. The three countries will join forces to create a 5,000-strong unit to fight the jihadist violence that has for years plagued the nations.
As part of the implementation of its roadmap, in particular the aspects relating to the free movement of fellow citizens, the president of the Confederation of Sahel States, AES, is informing confederal and international opinions of the introduction of an AES passport with effect from January 29, 2025.
Why are they moving so fast? They are moving fast because geopolitical partners are watching. The Europeans are observing. The Americans are watching. The Asian partners are watching. Indians and the Chinese, the Russians, even African partners, including Middle Eastern partners, Turkey is observing what's going on in the region. It is vital to understand that these steps that these countries are taking will shape the future geopolitical engagement in the continent of Africa. That's the reason why, if you look at the different things that they have done, first, they asked France to leave their nation. Secondly, they move ahead to ask the United States of America, one of the most powerful nations in the world, to leave the country. They move ahead to sever ties with France, and they proceed again to make sure that the relationship is not going anywhere. Cut all bilateral relations in terms of the military aspect or the accord that they had together. They severed that out. They told ECOWAS that we are no longer partners with regards to your current operations. We want to form things on our own. They went and formed the AES. They went ahead to reinvigorate that particular decision and moves very swiftly to form a 5,000 strongman force to engage jihadists in the region. They proceed to creating a new passport which will enable economic activity and free movement. These are some of the steps. And why is this important? It is important because these countries have come to realize that the European partners, African partners, are not coming to save them. They are within the African continent, of course, but they face separate threat from what other countries across the continent of Africa are facing. The threat that these countries face is not as compared to what other African nations are facing. Let me know what you think with regards to the steps that the Sahelian states have taken, if this is something you consider a positive move in terms of their survival. Make no mistake, we're not saying that they wait military into direction. What we are saying here is that these countries were in a colonial chokehold and they are trying to re-diversify themselves and move forward to regaining their sovereignty. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you think with regards to this particular relationship and why do you think that AES is making a move to re-establish its sovereignty and start making choices for its own people across the region. For now, I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.